He shared his meal with 2 alien sisters. Minutes later, their entire fleet arrived. The chain sang softly every time Daniel Rowe moved. 80 kilograms of solid tungsten beads, each one smooth, heavy, and cold, wrapped around his neck 3 times like a metal snake. It wasn't decoration. It was a sentence he gave himself. Every bead carried a name, a life taken, a story he could never forget. 18 months had passed since he forged it. In that time, the weight had bent his shoulders and crushed his spine by 2 centimeters. But he never took it off. The station medics offered to remove it many times. They didn't understand that the metal was fused with skin and guilt. Cutting it off would mean cutting away who he was. He walked through Omega 7 Station, a rusted trade hub floating at the edge of dying stars. The air smelled of oil, burnt circuits, and desperation. Vendors shouted in 50 alien tongues. Miners fought over broken tools. Traders argued over worthless credits. It was chaos, but it was his kind of silence. Daniel stopped by a noodle stall. The steam fogged his visor. A drunk alien stumbled into him, hands pressing against the hard chain under his jacket. The alien froze, eyes wide. You're the one they call the chain man, he whispered. Daniel said nothing. The alien backed away, fear in his throat, and disappeared into the crowd. He continued toward the docks, boots echoing against metal floors. His hands worked automatically, fixing a broken cargo loader. The hiss of steam, the thump of machinery, the hum of oxygen vents. It was the background song of survival. He counted, as always. Credits left, 47. Days since the accident, 547. Heartbeats, 62 per minute. He kept track of everything, except peace. Peace was gone long ago. When blood mixed with oil on his hands, he wiped it on his pants and kept working. Blood washed away. Oil didn't. That was the rule. Then came the sound that always meant trouble, screams, and an energy weapon charging. He told himself it wasn't his business. He told himself to stay put. But his feet had other ideas. Old habits are harder to kill than guilt. He followed the noise to the bazaar. A ring of bodies surrounded a scene that twisted his gut. 2 women stood in the middle, blue-skinned, regal, and starving. They didn't belong here. The taller one had silver hair and eyes that looked like frozen storms. The other, with rose-gold hair, leaned against her sister, barely standing. They were arguing with a vendor, a thick-shelled alien with a glowing throat sack. "This hairpin," the silver-haired woman said, holding out a shining piece of jewelry, "is worth 50 times your stall." The vendor laughed, a wet sound. "Pretty rocks don't buy food, princess. Bring credits, or work." "We can work," the weaker one said softly. "We're educated. Maybe you can serve other kinds of customers," the alien said, eyes crawling down their bodies. Daniel moved before thinking. "They're with me," he said. He placed his last ration pack on the counter. "Trade." The vendor sneered. "That's not enough." The chain clicked once, a low metallic growl. The vendor's throat light dimmed to fear. "Fine," he muttered, pushing 2 food packets and a water tablet forward. "Take it. Get them out." Daniel nodded once. "Pleasure doing business." He turned to the sisters. "Walk. Or fall. Choose fast." The silver-haired one glared at him. The rose-haired one stumbled. He caught her. Her skin was cold and trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. They followed him to his quarters, a maintenance room barely 2 meters wide. 1 cot, 1 table, 1 man and his ghosts. He set her down gently, handed them water. "Small sips," he warned. "Too fast, and it comes back up." He broke open a protein bar and tore off a piece of something rare, earth chocolate. The scent filled the tiny room. The rose-haired woman took a bite. Her eyes closed. She made a small sound, half sob, half joy. For a moment, Daniel forgot the world outside existed. The silver-haired sister watched him, suspicious but tired. "Why?" she asked. "Why help strangers?" Daniel touched the first bead at his neck. "I fix things," he said quietly. She looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing his soul. Then she gave a thin smile. "You're strange, human. Been called worse." The floor trembled then, a deep, shaking hum that made the water ripple. The window flared with purple light. Space itself tore open. 1 ship appeared. Then 10. Then hundreds. Giant carriers and destroyers, all painted in imperial purple and gold. The symbol of House Cassari glowed on their hulls. The sisters froze, eyes wide with dread. "Uncle found us," the silver-haired one whispered. The door exploded inward before he could speak. Soldiers in black armor stormed the room, weapons raised. 12 of them, all aimed at him. "Daniel Rowe," the captain said through his speaker, "you are under arrest for kidnapping the Imperial princesses." "I didn't," he started, but the weapon's barrel shut him up. The sisters shouted, but the soldiers ignored them. Daniel looked at the numbers, at the odds. 12 guns. 2 frightened women. 1 man with ghosts. He raised his hands. "I'll come quietly." The chain clicked again, softly, almost like laughter, or farewell. Darkness took him. When Daniel woke, everything felt wrong. The weight of the chain was still there, but beneath him was softness. Silk sheets. Cushions that shimmered like liquid light. His wrists burned. He looked down and saw the neural cuffs. Military issue, keyed to his DNA. A single wrong move, and they would drop him lifeless in a second. The room smelled like flowers and ozone. Through a transparent wall, 3 suns painted the sky in gold and red. He was no longer on the station. This was royal ground. 2 guards stood at the door, their armor gleaming white and gold. They tried not to look nervous, but their hands twitched whenever his chain shifted. The door slid open with a whisper. The sisters entered. Not starving this time. Not weak. Dressed in royal silks that changed color with every movement. Rose, silver, blue. They looked like fire wrapped in ice. But Daniel could see it, the fear hiding behind control. "You're awake," said the silver-haired one, voice cold but trembling underneath. "We're under the Regent's protection." His version of it. Daniel sat up, the chain clinking like thunder in a temple. "Protection," he repeated. "That what they call cages here?" Her lips curved bitterly. "He doesn't kill what he can use." The rose-haired sister stepped forward, softer, hopeful. "We told them you saved us. That you didn't harm us. But they—" She stopped, eyes lowering. "They don't care." "Didn't think they would," Daniel said. She knelt beside him and took out a small vial. The scent of mint and medicine filled the air. Gently, she pressed cool ointment along the wounds where the chain cut his skin. "These are infected," she whispered. "They always are. You let it eat you alive," the silver-haired one said. "Why?" Daniel didn't answer. He stared out the window, at the endless pearl towers of the Kasari capital. He could feel the city pulsing under his feet, a heart made of power and secrets. "Where's your uncle?" "Preparing his stage," the silver-haired one replied. "He'll summon you soon. He likes his audience when he breaks things." The door opened again. "Now," a guard barked. The throne room was built to make mortals feel small. It stretched like a cathedral made of mirrors and light. At the far end sat the regent, upon a seat carved from a single shard of frozen starlight. He rose as Daniel was brought in. The regent was beautiful, in a way that made beauty dangerous. His skin shimmered blue-white, like polished marble. His silver hair caught the light. His smile was practiced perfection. "So," he said, circling Daniel, "the human who wears his sins." The nobles watched from the balconies, hundreds of eyes, hungry for spectacle. "Each bead," the regent said softly, "a life, yes?" He leaned close, voice silk and venom. "Do they whisper when you sleep?" "They scream," Daniel answered. "Poetic," the regent said, pretending to shiver. "So fragile, humans. So dramatic." He motioned, and the sisters were brought forward, now dressed like dolls in glass, chained with gold, eyes downcast. "My nieces," the regent announced to the court, "once pure blood, now corrupted by earth's filth." The crowd murmured like snakes. The silver-haired one, trembling but fierce, lifted her head. "We ran from you, not to him." The regent's smile didn't break. His hand cracked across her face. The sound echoed through the hall. She stumbled, but stayed standing. "Defiance," the regent said softly. "Just like your mother." Something cold passed through Daniel. The chain shifted. The nobles fell silent. Even the guards took a step back. The regent turned to him. "Do you love them, mechanic?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't blink. The regent laughed. "No matter. You'll serve me now, entertainment for the court. A pet of iron and guilt." He gestured lazily. "Show them the human's weight." 2 guards shoved a metal bar into Daniel's hands. It was heavy, almost as much as the chain itself. He didn't move. The guards kicked his legs. He still didn't move. Finally, the regent said softly, "Lift it." Daniel straightened his spine, bones creaking, muscles burning. He raised the bar high and let the chain sing as it scraped against the floor. The sound filled the hall like thunder. Nobles covered their ears. The regent's smile cracked for a heartbeat. Then Daniel dropped the bar with a single word. Fixed. The echo of it bounced through the throne room. Low. Final. Dangerous. The regent's eyes narrowed. You think this is defiance? Daniel met his gaze. No. That was a reminder. You can chain me, but I'm already carrying something. Heavier than you'll ever understand. The silence that followed was deep and electric. Even the guards didn't breathe. Interesting, the regent whispered. Let's see how long that spine lasts. He turned away, but his eyes flicked to the sisters, cold and possessive. Keep him alive. For now. Daniel was dragged back to his quarters. As the doors closed, he exhaled slowly. The chain hummed, restless. For the first time in months, he felt it, the quiet stirring of something he'd buried. Not anger, not grief, something far more dangerous. Hope. Days blurred inside the palace. Daniel didn't see the sky again. Only the cold glow of marble halls and the reflection of his own scars in walls polished too clean. The guards followed him everywhere, always silent, always ready. He worked when ordered, repaired machines, fixed systems no one else could touch. He wasn't a guest. He was a reminder, a living ornament of regret. The sisters visited sometimes, when the regent allowed it. They came dressed in silver and rose, with polite smiles for the cameras that watched them. But when the guards left, those smiles died fast. You shouldn't be here, Daniel said one night. He'll use you to hurt me. He already is, said the silver-haired one, voice low, eyes dark. Every day we sit beside him and pretend we're loyal. The younger one placed a small bowl of food in front of him. Eat, she said softly. You need your strength. He almost laughed. For what? For whatever's coming, she whispered. The lesson began 2 nights later. Trumpets echoed through the palace. The nobles gathered again, hungry for blood masked as culture. Daniel was dragged into the throne hall, wrists locked behind him. The regent waited on his starlight throne, smiling like a god about to enjoy a performance. Humans, he said to the audience, are fascinating. They carry guilt like a crown and call it virtue. He looked at Daniel. Let's test that virtue today. 2 guards pulled forward the silver-haired princess, her head held high, even as chains glittered at her wrists. She insulted the crown, the regent said, pacing around her. And I, merciful as always, will let the court decide her punishment. The nobles shouted suggestions, words that tasted like cruelty. The regent silenced them with a raised hand. 30 lashes, he declared. Enough to humble, not enough to kill. The younger sister screamed, No, I'll take them, she cried, but soldiers pinned her arms. The silver-haired one said nothing. Her silence was sharper than any weapon. The guards bound her to a steel post at the center of the hall. The energy whip hummed alive, its purple light staining her back. Daniel's chain rattled once. The first strike landed. The sound cracked through the air. She didn't scream. Blood bloomed like red silk across blue skin. Daniel began to count. Quietly, calmly, like a prayer. 1, 2, 3. Stop him, the regent said, frowning. Daniel kept going. 7, 8, 9. The chain vibrated, the beads clicking together in rhythm. The temperature in the room dropped. The nobles shifted uneasily. 20, Daniel said, voice steady now. 21. Enough, the regent snapped. Stop counting. Daniel looked up. His eyes were calm, cold, unbreakable. Every number is a promise, he said. And I don't break promises. The chain sang louder. The guards hesitated. Even the whip wielder stepped back, trembling. The regent waved his hand impatiently. 3 lashes. Finish it. The final strikes fell. The silver-haired woman collapsed against the restraints, barely conscious. Daniel's counting stopped at 112. His voice was soft but clear. That's how many bodies I'll leave between here and you. The hall froze. The regent smiled, but the edge in his eyes flickered. You think you frighten me, human? Daniel didn't answer. His silence was heavier than words. Take him away, the regent ordered. Let him dream of threats he'll never fulfill. Back in his quarters, the sisters came to him again. The younger one's hands shook as she cleaned her sister's wounds. He's gone too far, she whispered. He'll kill us next. Maybe, Daniel said. Maybe not. You counted. The silver-haired one murmured weakly. Why? So I don't forget what's owed. You can't fight him, she said. He controls everything. Daniel looked at the chain resting on his knees. His fingers brushed the lock at his throat. The same lock he had welded shut with his own blood. Beneath the scar tissue was something else, something built, hidden. Control, he said quietly, is just an illusion for men who've never lost it. The sisters exchanged a look. They didn't understand. Not yet. When they left, Daniel sat alone in the dim light. He touched one bead, whispering the name etched in memory. Emma, he said. Then another. Marcus. Then another. Sarah. The chain hummed softly. For months, it had sung of sorrow. Tonight, it whispered something new. It whispered of reckoning. Daniel closed his eyes and smiled, a slow, broken thing. Soon, he said to the weight around his neck, you'll sing a different song. And in the silence that followed, for the first time in 550 nights, the beads answered. Night folded over the palace like a black sail. Corridors went quiet. Servants vanished. Guards leaned on spears and told themselves monsters were stories. Daniel sat cross-legged on the floor of his gilded cage. He closed his eyes and listened to the tiny storm around his neck. The beads were not silent tonight. He exhaled slow, found the hidden ridge beneath old scar tissue. A thumb press. A twist only he knew. A click like a lock remembering its first shape. The chain did not fall. It woke. 12 strands slid apart with a whisper of wire. Beads rolled along braided tungsten like heavy rain that had learned to obey. For wrapped his forearms. For hung from his waist. For drifted behind him like the tails of a hunting beast. Daniel stood. The neural cuffs hummed a warning. He breathed through the pain until the hum lost its teeth. Pain was information. He filed it away. The door hissed open. A guard blinked at the empty bed. Then at the man made of wire and will. He reached for the alarm. A single bead flicked forward, hit his throat, and came home on a leash of gray. Rest, Daniel whispered. The hallway smelled of polished stone and flowers. He moved fast and quiet, counting corners, counting breaths, counting the bodies he had promised. His feet knew the route. He had been mapping it in his head for days. Service stairs, laundry shaft, a narrow run above the kitchens where steam hid heat signatures. 2 guards turned a corner. 3 beads went out. 1 took a knee. 1 crushed a visor. 1 cracked a wrist. They gasped. He didn't stop. He didn't kill them. Not part of the count. Not yet. He punched a maintenance panel. The comm lines inside sparked blue. Regent, he said into the wires, voice steady low. I'm not coming for them. I'm coming for you. Every man between us is your choice. He cut the line. Let fear do its work. Alarms woke in layers. Red light pulsed across Pearl halls. Boots thundered in patterns that made officers feel important. Daniel stepped through it like a shadow that had decided to be real. A shield wall blocked the junction to the royal wing. 12 soldiers. Linked projectors. Good discipline. Bad geometry. He snapped a strand around a pillar and yanked. Shields buckled. Another strand sprayed beads like a fistful of meteors. Faceplates cracked. Targeting died. The 3rd strand did what it was born to do. It ended the fight. 8 seconds. He walked on. Return, he said, as each bead zipped back. The wire sang. The Hall of Ancestors rose ahead, a forest of columns carved like ghosts. He heard the garden fountains beyond, sweet water over stone. He smelled blood roses. He thought of the silver-haired sister tied to a post while courtiers counted pain like coins. The memory tightened every knot in the wire. A squad tried to ambush him behind a statue of a king with kind eyes. The first bead curved around marble and hit from the blind side. The second took a voice. The third pinned a hand to a shield. The fourth did not need to be fired. The others ran. He reached the royal wing entrance. 40 guards. Heavy guns. A captain with a face like granite. And between them and him, the sisters in wedding cloth. One dressed like starfire, one like midnight sea. Jewels at their throats. Eyes that refused to bow. Move, Daniel said. No, the silver-haired one said. Her voice shook, but she did not. Not through us. He looked, really looked. Saw the bruise under powder. Saw the way the younger sister kept a hand on her ribs like a secret. Saw fear. Saw stubborn hope. I won't, he said. He turned away from them and stepped to a great low on the wall. He pulled it free with a wire loop and dropped into the throat of the palace. Heat wrapped him. Pipes sang. The air tasted like copper and old storms. He crawled through the spine of the building, following the map he had memorized while nobles laughed. Left at the warm rush. Right at the cold hum. Down where the floor beams changed tone. He emerged below the great doors of the throne room, in a crawl space that smelled of dust and history. Above him, music started. Wedding music. Bright and cruel. He set the cutter against the stone. A neat circle. A fall of glowing powder. He rose through the floor like the end of a bad dream. Gasps. Screams. The music died on a broken note. The regent stood at the altar, robe pure and smile thin. For one heartbeat, he looked human. Then pride found his face again. Impossible, he said. The shackles. Pain is data, Daniel answered. He took 3 steps forward. The beads spread like wings. I sorted it. He counted the room without moving his lips. Exits. X. Heights. Guards on the rail. Nobles without courage. The sisters at the side, held by gold chains and grim men. He lifted one hand. The strands coiled, hungry. 63, he said softly. 112 promised. The regent drew a blade with a live edge. White fire ran down its length. Come then, mechanic, he said. Show me your weight. Daniel smiled without warmth. Gladly. And the chain, at last, sang the song it had been forged to sing. The throne room burned with music and lies. Hundreds of nobles stood around the raised altar, their robes like a storm of color and vanity. The scent of perfume could not hide the iron in the air. Servants carried trays of gold wine, pretending not to tremble. At the center stood the regent, his smile calm, his eyes calculating, as he prepared to marry his nieces to power. Then the floor cracked. The marble split with a hiss of molten dust. A circle of stone glowed red-hot, and through it rose a figure wrapped in shadows and tungsten. Chains drifted in the air around him, each one alive, humming like a hive of angry stars. The guests froze. Someone screamed. 0, whispered a guard. The regent's perfect posture faltered for the first time. Impossible, he said. The neural cuffs. Daniel. No, 0, looked up. They taught me pain is control, he said. They were right. He stepped forward. The chains swayed with the sound of thunder. You took what wasn't yours, he said. Now I'm here to collect the debt. Kill him, the regent shouted. Guards fired. Blue bolts cut the air. 0's hand flicked. 12 beads spun outward, blurring faster than bullets. The shots ricocheted, slicing into walls and armor. Metal met flesh. Screams followed. The beads snapped back, dripping silver blood that wasn't human. Return, he whispered, and they obeyed. The nobles stumbled over each other, shoving to escape. A few fainted. One cried prayers to a dozen gods. The regent drew his sword, a blade made of crystal and light. You think this is justice? He hissed. You'll destroy everything. Everything's already broken, 0 said. I'm just here to sweep. He moved. The chains moved with him. One snapped a guard's weapon in half. Another coiled around a soldier's leg, yanking him into the air. The regent's sword flashed in reply, its edge humming. The two collided in the center of the room, thunder and light bound together. 0 ducked under a swing, beads whipping out to strike. Sparks flew where tungsten met plasma. The regent moved with unnatural speed, his body reinforced with implants and pride. Each strike carried strength beyond mortal limits. But 0 was something else now. Calm, deliberate, terrifying. The fight danced across the shattered floor. Statues cracked. Gold tiles broke loose. Every time the regent struck, 0 countered, not faster, but smarter. He was a mechanic before he was a killer. He watched angles. He adjusted force. He fixed the battle while it happened. A sharp line of heat crossed his ribs. Blood soaked his side. The regent smiled. Bleeding already? 0 straightened. Not the first time. He flicked his wrist. 2 beads darted low. One hit a kneecap, the other a wrist. The regent staggered. First blood, 0 said softly. The sisters stood chained beside the altar. The rose-haired one tried to move, to shout, but soldiers held her back. The silver-haired one met Daniel's eyes, her lips trembling. Don't, she whispered. You'll die? Maybe, he said, not looking away from the regent. But not alone. The regent lunged, blade screaming. 0 twisted aside, grabbed the blade's hilt with one gloved hand, and drove his knee into the regent's chest. The sound was ribs cracking. Still, The alien king didn't fall. He smiled through blood. You fight like a ghost, he gasped. But you're still human. You'll still break. Zero's chain curled around his arms, tightening. Then I'll break forward. The two collided again. This time, the impact shattered the dais. The regent's sword slashed through a column. Dust filled the air. From within the haze, 12 beads moved like comets, carving streaks of light. Each one found armor, joint, weakness. The regent spun away, his blade leaving trails of light. One cut grazed Daniel's stomach. Pain exploded white-hot. He dropped to a knee. The regent raised the blade for the final strike. This is mercy, he said. Daniel smiled through the pain. This is engineering. He pressed his palm to the regent's sword. A small pulse device, a magnetic resonance tool from the maintenance armory, activated. Every bead in the room launched at once. They hit the sword, the armor, the man. Each one struck like thunder, tungsten punching through royal flesh. The regent screamed as the air turned white and red. The blast threw him across the hall. He struck the pearl wall hard enough to leave a shadow. Silence followed. Then, slowly, the regent fell to his knees, eyes wide, chest torn open. By the weight of his own empire. You can't. I just did, Daniel said. The regent collapsed. The blade went dark. The chains fell still. The sound that replaced them wasn't thunder. It was breathing, ragged, human, alive. Zero staggered. His knees hit the cracked floor. Blood spilled from his stomach where the blade had entered. The sisters broke free, running to him through smoke and ruin. Daniel, the rose-haired one shouted. She caught him before he fell. The silver-haired sister pressed her hands to the wound, desperate. Stay with us. He looked up, eyes unfocused. Told you, he whispered. I fix things. Then he went limp. The sisters screamed his name as the chain began to hum again, not in rage, but in mourning. The beads turned red, glowing faintly, as if refusing to let go. The palace trembled under the weight of its dead king. Outside, the three sons rose together. Inside, the man called Zero stopped breathing. For now, silence ruled the ruins of the throne room. No music, no orders, no breath, except the ragged sound of two women trying to keep one man alive. Daniel lay on the shattered marble floor, motionless. The chain that once moved like a storm now lay scattered around him, its gray metal soaked in blood that wasn't sure if it was human anymore. Stay with us, the rose-haired sister whispered, her hands pressed to his wound. Blood bubbled between her fingers. Please, Daniel. Please. The silver-haired one tore a strip from her gown, wrapping it around him with trembling hands. He's losing too much. I can't. You can, the younger said sharply. We both can. Her eyes burned with the same light that once belonged to the regent, bright, royal, and fierce. She looked at the chain and spoke words that hadn't been spoken aloud in centuries. By blood and bond, by star and stone, we call the right of the living flame. The silver-haired sister froze. No, that right is forbidden. Then let it be forbidden, the younger one said. He saved us. He deserves more than a grave. She sliced her palm open with a shard of broken crystal and pressed her hand against his wound. Help me. For a long moment, her sister didn't move. Then she exhaled, cut her own hand, and joined it. By blood and bond, she whispered. Their royal blood, golden blue, radiant in the low light, mingled with his red. The chain around him began to hum again, faintly at first, then stronger. The sound wasn't metallic anymore. It was alive. The beads lifted from the floor, spinning slowly in a halo of light. Daniel, the silver-haired one said softly. Come back. His chest rose once, barely. The wound glowed where their blood met his. The energy from their royal line reacted with the tungsten, ancient metal designed to endure cosmic pressure. The mixture of biology and machine forged something new. The chains changed color, from gray to deep crimson shot, through with veins of gold. The hum turned into a low chord, full of sorrow and strength. The sisters held on as the light grew brighter. He's fighting it, said the silver-haired one. He's always fighting. Then let him win, her sister whispered. Let him choose. The floor beneath them cracked again, this time from energy, not battle. The nobles who had survived crawled to the exits, too terrified to look back. The palace trembled, as if the empire itself was holding its breath. Daniel gasped, sharp, violent, alive. The The air around him pulsed. The wound in his stomach sealed slowly, the blood turning to dark metal before fading beneath new skin. He blinked once, his eyes flickering between human brown and something brighter, like molten steel. "What did you do?" His voice was weak, but steady. "We shared it," the rose-haired sister said. "The pain, the burden, the blood, all of it." He sat up, the new chain sliding over his shoulders with a soft, harmonic chime. It felt heavy, but not like before. The weight was divided now. Shared. Bearable. "They're singing," he said quietly, touching one of the glowing beads. "They're remembering." The silver-haired one answered. "You're dead, our ancestors, they're together now." He looked at them. These two women who had risked their lineage, their thrones, their lives for him, and didn't know what to say. "Why?" he asked. The younger one smiled through tears. "Because you carried the dead for too long. It's our turn to carry you." Outside, the suns broke through the clouds, sending rays of light into the shattered hall. The beam touched the throne, now cracked down the middle, and the regent's body, lying forgotten at its base. His empire had ended. Something new had begun. The palace guards approached cautiously, weapons lowered. None of them dared speak. The sight before them was not war, it was resurrection. The silver-haired princess stood first. "The regent is dead," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "His rule ends here." The younger one helped Daniel to his feet, and his sins end with him. Daniel stood tall again. The chain shimmered red and gold around his shoulders, pulsing like a living heart. The sisters looked at him with quiet awe. "You're not Zero anymore," the rose-haired one said softly. He shook his head. "No," he murmured. "Zero was just the weight. This," he touched the chain. "This is the reason." The chain hummed in agreement. It was no longer a tune for ghosts. It was a promise. Together, they stepped through the wrecked doorway and into the courtyard, where the suns were rising over a trembling empire. Soldiers dropped to one knee as the sight hit them, the human wrapped in royal light, and the two heirs who stood beside him, unchained and unafraid. The empire watched its new rulers walk into the dawn, the man who carried death now carrying hope. And above them, the chains sang, not of guilt, not of vengeance, but of rebirth. Morning sunlight poured over the broken palace like liquid fire. The three sons of Kasari rose together for the first time since the regent's fall, turning the world gold. The city below was quiet. No sirens, no processions, just the silence that comes after the storm, when everyone waits to see if peace is real this time. Inside the throne hall, Daniel stood between the sisters. The throne itself lay cracked behind them, split clean down the center like a wound finally closed. Around their feet shimmered dust from shattered marble and blood turned to crystal. He looked down at the chain resting across his shoulders. The metal was no longer gray. It pulsed with veins of red and gold, warm against his skin. When he touched it, he could hear whispers, faint and human. Not screams anymore. Names. Gratitude. Rest. The sisters stood beside him, no longer in rags or ceremonial silk. They wore plain royal coats, simple and strong. The uniforms of those who build, not rule. "Your empire needs a name again," Daniel said quietly. The silver-haired one smiled. "Not an empire," she said. "A union. Of worlds. Of the living and the remembered." The rose-haired sister reached for one of the glowing beads. "We'll rebuild from truth, not fear." Daniel nodded. "Then you don't need a throne." The sisters exchanged glances, then both smiled. "Neither do you," the younger said softly. He laughed quietly. "Never liked chairs anyway." They stepped out into the courtyard where thousands had gathered. Soldiers, servants, traders, even street children, all waiting to see what would happen next. Some knelt, others stood. All were silent when they saw the man with the living chain. The silver-haired heir raised her voice. "The regent is gone. His rule is over. But the weight of his sins remains. We cannot erase it, but we can carry it together." The crowd listened, breath held. The rose-haired sister took Daniel's hand, lifted it high so everyone could see the crimson gold chain wrapped around him. "This man carried our pain when none of us could. He bore the weight of the dead and still chose to save the living. Let his chain remind us. No one carries the burden alone again." A murmur swept through the people like wind through leaves. Heads bowed. Some wept. Daniel felt the sound of the beads deepen, humming in tune with the heartbeat of the city itself. For the first time since he forged them, the chain didn't feel like punishment. It felt like a pulse, a link between every voice that refused to be forgotten. Weeks turned into months. The palace became something new, a council hall filled with voices from across the systems. The sisters ruled not as monarchs, but as builders, calling themselves guardians of the line. Daniel worked among them quietly, his hands repairing the machinery that kept the new world alive. Sometimes, in the evenings, they sat together under the starlight garden. The sisters would hold parts of the chain, and the three of them would share its weight in silence. It had become a ritual, not of guilt, but of remembrance. Each bead now held more than a name of the dead. Some carried fragments of life, a pressed flower, a child's drawing, a recording of laughter. The dead and living existed together, side by side, in perfect balance. One morning, a small cry echoed through the chamber. The sisters rushed in with their newborn child, a girl with bright eyes the color of early dawn. Daniel smiled and whispered, "She's got your courage. She'll have your stubbornness," the rose-haired sister teased. They placed a tiny bead around her wrist, a crystal one, not metal. "Not for weight," the silver-haired one said softly. "For memory." The chain shimmered, approving. Years later, stories of the human who carried the dead spread across 1,000 worlds. They said he never raised a weapon again. They said he fixed broken cities the same way he once fixed ships. They said his chain sang wherever injustice tried to rise, and the people who heard it stood a little straighter. But the truth was simpler. Daniel spent his days teaching the engineers of the new age how to repair what pride had broken. At night, he walked the palace gardens, where the beads glowed faintly under starlight. Sometimes he felt the faint laughter of two women behind him. Sometimes, a small hand tugging at the chain. The weight never left him, but he had learned something. It didn't have to. The burden was never meant to crush, it was meant to connect. And so, when the suns rose and the city sang the anthem of rebirth, Daniel walked to the balcony, the chain alive with red light. He looked out at a galaxy rebuilding itself and whispered, "Now it's your turn to carry the weight." The wind carried his words through the towers, across the plazas, through the hearts of every species listening. And for the first time in generations, the Kasari capital answered with a single, united sound, one that was not fear, not worship, but understanding. The chain glowed brighter, its song rising into the sky like a vow kept forever. Not of death, not of power, but of choice.